Okay, so previously on the book of Shmuel part Bet, we saw David's request to build a permanent home, to build a bayit for Hashem was denied, but it was denied in like the best possible way by Hashem deferring it to David's son, who would become David's bayit, right? The first true dynasty of kingship that we're going to have as the Jewish nation. It seems like the two of these things basically go hand in hand. You can't have a bayit for Hashem without there being a bayit, so to speak, a perpetual dynasty for the Melech. Now, this week, we're going to finally really transition from the model that started way back in Sefer Shoftim of individual leaders who don't have continuity to Malachim. In this chapter, we're going to meet a new aspect of David the Conqueror. With apologies to anybody who might be interested in all the locations that we're going to have in this chapter, we're going to gloss over them. I know that Corin has this is like the longest chapter in the book. Moshe Garziel over here has like 100 pages on the different places that David captures. We're going to kind of move past that. We're going to focus a little bit more, I think, on the proactive military assault, since it's the first time, maybe since, I don't know, Shimshon or Yehoshua, that you have like a proactive leader of the Jewish people, meaning intentionally going out and fighting against the enemies instead of waiting for them to come to you. As we're going to see David, who was like the sweet harp-playing, shepherd who dances with reckless abandon, is now the warrior before whom no enemy can stand, because Hashem is with him. Our quote is from William the Conqueror. By the splendor of God, I have taken possession of my realm. The earth of England is in my two hands. Now, I didn't pick that quote just because we're talking about David the Conqueror and he's William the Conqueror. There's actually a lot of similarities between the two of them. William the Conqueror came from a kind of controversial or maybe ignominious birth. He survived a number of assassination attempts. He takes a survey of his kingdom, which he calls the Doomsday Book. And David, we're not up to it yet, but David's going to take a survey of the kingdom, which will lead to an actual doomsday. William was the first Norman king of England who had a son that ruled after him. And apparently he was noted for his unusual appearance. He was much taller than everybody else, kind of like Shaul, William the Conqueror being 5'10". That was the connection there. Okay, let's start with chapter 8. It was after everything that we had just reviewed in the previous chapter. Vayach David es plishtim vayachneim vayikach David es meteg ha'ama miyad plishtim. So David attacks the plishtim instead of waiting for them to come to him, and he takes the meteg ha'ama. So this is a very unusual phrase. It seems like the literal translation is the like that metal bit that goes in the animal's mouth that holds the reins together. The idea being the Plishtim, the Confederacy is held together, right? Kind of like that piece of metal holds the reins together. It's held together by the main city. So we're going to assume that that's God or whichever city it was, but that's the linchpin, almost like a literal linchpin that holds their confederacy together. That's whatever David conquered. I'm not sure what some of the other translations do with it, but that's the basic idea, that he basically took over the center, the thing that's holding the rest of the Plishtim together as a nation.
Right, from God to Arma.
There you go. Vayach es Moav, and now he goes and attacks Moav, and does something highly unusual that I don't think we have anywhere else in Tanakh. V'yimadedem b'chevel hashkemosam arza, v'yimadedem shnei chavalim lahamis, umlo hachevel lahachayos. So he measures them off with this cord of rope. Two-thirds that get measured are to be killed, and a third he leaves alive. Vatihi Moav leDavid lavadim nosem inchan. They become tributaries to David. What's that?
Vassals.
Vassals, yes, correct. To David. Okay, what is going on with the sort of bizarre way that David is killing out Moab over here? So in full transparency, I'm not going to say I understand everything that's happening in this parak. And I should also point out we're kind of kaleidoscoping a bunch of battle. Like we've sort of left standard chronology. We're going to get all of David's wars in the scope of one parak over here. Um,
So do we know what did he treat Moab better than the Plishtim or worse than the Plishtim?
It,
Or you can't really tell.
so you can't really tell. It doesn't. It does. I mean, he didn't do this to the Plishtim, so we have to explain it, right?
Right. I just wondered would you think he would treat Moab worse or better?
Right.
Or
So he comes from Moab, right? So the way Chazal explain it is we had earlier when David was running away from Shaul, so he takes his parents and he sends them to Moab with the understanding that Moab is going to protect his parents. And since we never hear about his parents after that, so the way we read into the pasuk is that the Moabim killed his parents, and now he's exacting revenge for the fact that they killed his parents by doing this sort of gratuitous kind of thing where he measures some out to live and some out to die. Um, that's never really set too well with me because the king is not supposed to have like personal vendettas, especially now. Like he's not the David of a few pragam ago who led a bunch of ragtag people who lived in the forest and could kind of do these things. He's the united king of the entire Jewish people. Um, I think the reading that might sort of it might be rub against our more modern sensibilities, but was pretty standard operating procedure for the ancient world. This is shock and awe. He's doing something that is intentionally um, more barbaric than we might expect, specifically to ensure that people take him seriously and don't resurface afterwards.
He has it differently than that.
Okay.
He has it that by doing this, they were a threat militarily to David.
Moab.
Moab was a threat militarily to Moab, to Bnei Israel. So by killing off 2/3 of their army, he's gotten rid of the political of the military threat because he's gotten rid of their army, and by keeping 1/3 of them alive, he's enabled them to proceed and pay, so to speak, tribute and be able to continue to live.
Okay.
And this
It's
was
utilitarian.
and this was normal, supposedly,
Right.
in the times.
Right.
Actually, they would kill more people than what he did.
Yeah, I think that's.
Does he contrast it to the Plishtim? What? Does he contrast it to what? No, he doesn't contrast.
No, I think it's true though that people in that time in that place did things considerably more barbaric than this.
In a bag.
We're gonna skip. There's a Medrash Tanchuma that is I'm just gonna mention because of how contemporary it is that all the nations that David is going after over here start to like complain and say, look, you had treaties with us, the Yavusi and we're going to see all the different nations of Canaan basically come out and say, well, what about the treaties that were made, previously? You're not supposed to go to war with us. So David goes to Beis Din and he takes off his royal garb and he puts on a talus and he says, look, these people made a treaty, then they violate the treaty, and now I'm going to attack them, and they're saying, "Oh, what about this treaty?" Right? So to me, this is as contemporary as like modern Israel with how the enemies of the Jewish people sort of complain about treaties that they want to impose when they want to, and at other times just completely disregard.
I see what you said on the bottom. He mentions the Medrash that David punished them because they murdered his parents and his brothers.
Right. Yeah, what I was mentioning to you about the shock and awe is really from Bravanel. Okay, let's keep going. Vayach David es Hadad Ezer ben Rechov melech tzova belechto lahashiv yado ben Ahar Paras. So David defeats Hadad Ezer, the son of Rechov, king of Tzova, who was then on his way to restore his. They translate Yado over here as his monument. By Nahar Paras, Ve'il David mimenu elef ushva meos parashim, and David captures 1,700 horsemen, ve'esrim elef ish, and 20,000 soldiers. Ish ragli, the foot soldiers, v'yaker David es kol harechev, and David hamstrings all of the horses, v'yoser mimenu me'arachav, and he leaves only 100 that he didn't. I think the term is huff. Okay, what is going on over here? This kind of sounds like Tsar Balachayim, right? So it's important to point out that the Jewish army in the ancient world, we don't have any record of them using chariots. And in fact, the king has a specific commandment, not lo yirba lo susim, right? He's not supposed to have too many horses because that will make him dependent on Mitzrayim that produces horses for cavalry, for chariots. We also have a commandment from Hashem to Yoshua when he was originally conquering the land to do exactly this, to hamstring the horses. So David is, in one sense, following in that in that vein. The other thing that the research, the archaeological research, seems to show is that this is, again, standard operating procedure. If you don't want to keep the horses for yourself, you can't just like give them out to the people. You can't leave the horses around because then you're creating the potential where an enemy can come get those horses, and now you're fighting the chariots that you could have prevented. Right, you're basically fighting them a second time. By huffing them rather than putting them down, the horse is still able to do, we'll say, like domestic work. It can't pull. Cutting the tendon for the hamstring prevents the horse from having the power to pull a chariot, but doesn't prevent the horse from doing sort of more menial labor.
And they put them out to pasture.
Right. Same kind of thing. Charles, you with me?
I'm with you so far.
Okay, fantastic.
So why did he leave 100?
So he left 100. The king's allowed to have some amount of horses for his own private, like for his army, for his chariot. He just can't have an excessive amount. So the 100, I guess, is for his own. But Havo Aram Damesek la'azor lahadad Ezer melech tzova v'yachtavi ba'aram eser mushnaim elef ish. And now David pushes all the way to Damascus, and he comes to the aid of the king of Hadad Ezer of Tzova, and he kills 22,000 of the Armenians, the people from Aram. Vayasim David nitzivim ba'aram, and he places like these sentries. What's that? Governors. They have garrisons over here in Aram, Damascus. Utehi Aram leDavid lavadim nose mincha v'yosha Adonai es David b'chol asher halach. And now he's expanded his little mini empire over here. He has another people paying tribute to him, and Hashem is making sure that he's victorious wherever he goes. Vayikach David es shilte hazahav asher hayu el abdei Hadad Ezer v'viyem Yerushalayim. And David takes the booty over here, the gold shields from Hadad Ezer, and brings them to Yerushalayim. Remember, David knows he's not building the Beis HaMikdash, but that doesn't mean he can't literally pave the way for the Beis HaMikdash. Beyond expanding the borders, he's also collecting raw materials with which Shlomo will eventually build the Beis HaMikdash.
Remember again, how's he known?
He had last parak, he had a conversation with Hashem where he wanted to build the Beis HaMikdash. Hashem said, "It's not going to be you; it'll be your son." Umi betach umi berotai arei hadad ezer lakach hamelch David nechoshes harbe me'odim. From Betach and Barchotai, the towns of Hadad Ezer, David took a vast amount of copper. V'yishma toi melech Hamas ki hika David eis kol chel Hadad Ezer. And now we get to King Toi of Hamas, who heard that David defeated the entire army of Hadad Ezer. So Toi is someone that they make a lot of hay about in the archaeological record because they found someone with a similar name. I will read to you from Professor Gershon Galil. So King David halted the Arameans' expansion into the land of Israel on account of his alliance with the southern Philistine kings, as well as with Toi, king of Hamas, who is identified as Tai or Taita, the second king of Palestine, the northern sea peoples. This is, I'll show you a map in just a minute, but we're pushing into almost southern Turkey. That's how far north his it's not really his kingdom, it's like his partnerships are going to go. The Empire of David is a realistic historical phenomenon, and the biblical description of its formation and consolidation is possible and reasonable, says Professor Galil. It reflects the great struggle between the Arameans and the Sea People for the inheritance of the territories which were previously part of the Egyptian and Hittite empires. David took advantage of these conflicts to unite the northern and southern Sea Peoples against the mutual enemy Hadad Ezer, king of Aram Tzova. David defeated the Arameans and created a regional empire from the Sinai Peninsula to the Euphrates, 8 inscriptions recently discovered at different sites clearly indicate that a large kingdom named Palestine existed in northwestern Syria and southern Turkey. It encompassed the cities of Hamas, Aleppo, and Kharchamish. Professor Galil says this kingdom was inhabited by different groups, including the quote-unquote sea people. We're going to get to more of them momentarily. They invaded the Levant in the 12th century. We're holding now in about the 10th century, before the Common Era, and they conquered vast areas, destroyed kingdoms, and took over their lands. Purely for the sake of academic integrity, there are others who disagree with this characterization, mainly Israel Finkelstein. Most of his stuff, I think, is very agenda driven. He doesn't like it when archaeological discoveries support Tanakh. So we'll leave that as is. Yes. So Vayishlach Toi as Yoram beno El Hamelech David, and Toi sends his son Yoram to David, Lish'alo l'shalom, to greet him, ulevarcho, and to bless him, al asher nilcham b'Hadad Ezer v'yakehu, ki ish melchamos Toi, because Toi was also a man of war. Haya Hadad Ezer b'yado, haya klei kesef u'klei zahav u'klei nechoshes, and he brings again more of the precious metals to David in tribute. The only thing I'll point out over here is when you send your son as a political dignitary, not only are you sending a high-ranking official, it's a significant gesture of deference because you're putting your inheritance in someone else's hands, right? It's one thing to send a high-ranking official; it's another to send the person who is next in line to be the king to someone and sort of making yourself vulnerable to them by doing that.
It was common in the time.
Was common to send the son?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. It was particularly in Rome.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so also Gamosam Hikdish HaMelech David Ladonai.
Also, marriage is similar. Marriage is similar.
Yes, sure. Im HaKesef VaZahav Asher Hikdish Mi Kol HaGoyim Asher Kibesh. And David dedicated all of this stuff that he got, the silver, the gold, from all these other nations, he dedicates it to Hashem. Me'aram, u'mimov, u'bnei Ammon, u'miplishtim, u'me'amalek, u'mishlal, Hadad Ezer, ben Rechov, melech Tzova, and the plunder that he got from all of the various nations, and from Hadad Ezer of Rechov, the king of Tzova. V'yas David Shem b'shuvo mehakoso es Aram begay melech shmona asar elef, and David gains real fame when he defeats Edom. They have a different gears over here from Aram in the Septuagint, and he the Valley of Salt. Yeah, he killed 18,000 people. There's different girsas not only here in Shmuel, but in Divrei Yomim and Tehillim. We'll try to pull up one or two of those in a minute just to show the contrast.
So this processing from parak to parak, as you mentioned a minute ago, that Hashem just told them that he's not building the base of Mikdash. He's your son-in-law, which is fine. I mean, still, but it's not him. And he doesn't skip a beat. He immediately goes on the offensive. He has all these tremendous war victories, military victories. He doesn't even have to process the fact that he's not going to.
No, he has to process the fact that he has to supply the supplies for it.
I'm saying, like, meaning he's jumping into the fact that he's not going to get the glory, the end all glory of being the redeemer, builder, or whatever you call it.
Right.
And
he's not going to get his name on the plaque.
Yeah, and he's just like
he's getting his name on the plaque.
What? He didn't build it.
No, he didn't build it.
No, he's getting the name on the plaque because he's the one who's supplying it.
Right, he's donating all the stuff. Right. His name's not on. His name's not on the building. Right. The sanctuary is brought to you by, but
by David. That's all his wealth.
Right. But yes, no, I think what you're saying is very important. He doesn't say, well, if I can't do it, then forget it. Okay, I can't do it. Then what can I do? Let me do as much as I can.
But even like something within the Navi of like having him process that. It's a tremendous blow.
Yes.
And there's no.
We don't get
It's not a blow. If anything, it's a compliment because his ability. While he's told he's not going to build one of the temples, he's told he's the Davidic line that will carry the people, which is if anything a bigger thing than building the temple itself.
We see all these people doing things with what they can do if they're not going to take the next step, like with Moshe and Ari Mikla. He knew they wouldn't be good, but he picked them out. And Doug was well known for this. that he was willing to do whatever he could.
He's given a better thing. He's taking away the smaller, but given a bigger. He's promised that he's going to be the Davidic line that's going to carry the people.
Well, why would he not think he's
it's one thing to say,
but a king, that is the definition of the kingdom.
No, if you think about it, he's being promised that his line is going to continue.
Right.
That's more
Shaul
important.
never promised that?
No,
Never promised that?
No. Because Shaul, the only one who's promised that is David.
He was the first king. There was never said to him like
No, this idea of that you're gonna have a bayit and that it's gonna perpetuate, right? It was definitely implied in making Shaul king. There was no reason for Shaul to think it wouldn't go to his kid
But it was
until
never
David showed.
promised.
Right, that's true. It was never promised. What sin is this? Oh, I'm not even going to tell you where I found this map, but it's a really good map. This is. No. The map is legit. Just don't go to the website for anything else other than this one map. This is southern Turkey over here. This is how far David is pushed north. Damascus is like down here. So this is Eretz Yisrael, which stops, let's say, there. This is how far his partnerships.
How close do they come to Eilat?
So Eilat, they get very close.
That map seems to indicate Eilat is in Davidic
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
clearly argued.
Right. It's a suffix.
And how far down do they go? Which Palestinians?
They go down
Ashdod, Ashkelon.
further south than let's see. It's the desert. Yeah, they have a lot. They basically just go down to a lot. Like that's the furthest south.
But on the Mediterranean coast, how far down do they go?
Oh, past Gaza. It basically like to where we have it today, past Gaza and down to Egypt. Like they have here the border being the Wadi of Egypt. Like there's a stream right there. Okay, what are we up to? 13. Okay, Vayas David Shem. Oh, right. So we did all this. That he killed out the people of Edom. Let's do one more pasuk and then we'll talk about the archaeology. Vayasem be'Edom netzivim b'chol Edom sam netzivim. But he called. So they put these sentries, these garrisons in Edom. He kol Edom avadim leDavid. V'yosha Adonai es David b'chol asher halach. And all of Edom becomes a vassal to David, and Hashem makes sure that David is successful in everything that he does. This link I probably will share. It's from the the Institute of Biblical Archaeology. Again, archaeology confirms biblical account of Edomite statehood. They found these copper mines. They basically had assumed that the stuff in the Bible about Edom couldn't be right because Edom, the data they had was that Edom is a nomadic tribe, a bunch of nomadic tribes. They couldn't have a centralized way to produce the copper that the Tanakh says that they do, and then they found the actual stuff that basically just corroborates everything that we have read in this paragraph. Okay. The Yoav ben Suri al Atzava v'Yoshafat ben Achilud. Okay, so that's basically the end. I'm sorry, I skipped one pasuk. David al Kol Yisrael v'David ose mishpat utzedakah l'chol amo. So that's kind of the coda to the parak. David reigned over all Yisrael, and he executed justice among all the people. And now we get kind of a coda over here.
His people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You said to all the people.
I'm sorry. No, you're right. L'chol amo. Right. To the Jewish people.
Jewish people.
Yes. Now we get his cabinet. So Yoav ben Suri al Atzava. We know Yoav for a while already. He's the head of the army. V'Yoshafat ben Achilud is the mazkir. That's now a new official title, like Secretary of State, right? He's the person who takes care of all the records. V'Tzadok ben Achituv v'Achimelech ben Abiatar kohanim, and we have two priests, which is a little weird. You would expect kind of one Kohen Gadol. They're dividing the role over here. It's not 100% clear to me who these people are. Whatever. There's a little question with the names. We're not going to get into that so much. Usariah Sofer Sariah is the official scribe. And now we get Ben Yahu ben Yoyada, Vahakresi Vahaplesi. So even the language here is a little weird. It doesn't say Ben ben Yoyada is in charge of the Kresi and the Plesi, but he's with them. What are the Kresi and the Plesi? Any takers? What do we have in the translation? Most of the translations don't even try, right? Crazy archer. Yeah, you have.
No, he does. This one says archers and slingers.
Archers and slingers. Okay. So there's a lot of different attempts at this. So first of all, we have the Chazal who say that Ben Yoyada was in charge of the Urim V'Tumim. Shekarsim Estivrahim, right? They make a drasha on Kresi and Plesi. Why that's kind of a nickname for the Urim V'Tumim. But the academics will tell you it's everything from people from Crete, like Kresi, to shock troops that are like Delta Force, that have a special role outside of the military. And then we get a very surprising assertion over here: B'nei David Kohanim hayu, and David's sons were Kohanim. So that strikes us as super weird. David's sons are not Kohanim, right?
Yeah, but sometimes it's used. It's not the only time it's used, like for big important people or Talmidei Chachamim and things like that.
Okay, so that's the Gemara Nadarim. The Gemara Nadarim says as follows: Amar Rava Shari L'Tzura Mirabanan Lememar Tzura Mirabanan Ana. The rabbinical students can say, like, I'm in Kolel. Sharoli Tigra Beresha. So I'm allowed to skip the line. I get first dibs on things because just like sorry, let me read the rest of the Gemara because it says our pasuk Ubnei David Kohanim Hayu Ma Kohen Nota Barosh Aftam Chacham Nota Barosh. So it doesn't mean that they were actually Kohanim. It means that they were Talmidei Chachamim, and they just like a Kohen gets first pick of stuff. So David's kids who were Talmidei Chachamim also get first pick of stuff. The problem I have with that reading is it sounds way too much like the Bnei Eli to me. Like the whole sin of the Bnei Eli was that they were Kohanim and they came in and took the first portion before they were supposed to take it, right? That just so Das Mikra offers what I think is a simpler way to read it. Right now we're dealing historically with a period of time that is called Heter Habamos, where private altars are permitted because we don't yet have the Beis Hamikdash. So the Bnei David can be Kohanim. Anybody who officiates at a altar can be described as a Kohen. So there's no problem with describing them as actual priests. Just that they're not priests in the Beis Hamikdash in the term like in Levitical terms. When we described before that David is the one who's doing all the conquering over here, there's different versions of this in both Tehillim and Divrei Hayamim. So Tehillim 60 says as follows: "V'hatzesu es Aram Naharayim v'es Aram Tzova v'yashav Yoav v'yach es Edom b'gei melech shneim asar elef." So over there, Yoav is the one who's getting the credit. It seems like David is, because he's the commander in chief, so we're going to attach his name to it over here. But really, Yoav is the one who's kind of rolling up his sleeves. In Divrei Hayamim, it's Yoav's brother Vavishai ben Surya he ka es Edom b'gei hamelech shmona asar elef. Okay, did we cover everything? Oh, so one last point that is really interesting. Let's see if I can read it for you inside. I mentioned before that David's the first king that has really gone on the offensive after these different nations. It's not really true. Rabbi David Silver points out that Shaul is described almost the exact same way at the end of chapter 14 in part Aleph. So it's been a while, so you guys can be forgiven for not remembering, because I didn't remember either.
He never takes them really as vassals.
Wait, so V'Shaul lakad hamelucha al Yisrael v'yilachem savi b'chol oivav b'Moav u'b'nei Ammon u'b'Edom u'malchei Tzova u'b'Plishtim u'b'chol asher yifne Yarshia. So after Shaul secures his kingship over Yisrael, he wages war against all of his enemies: Moav, Ammon, Edom, Plishtim, the kings of Aram Tzova. Wherever he went, he put them to the worst. And then he goes after Amalek v'yatzos Yisrael miyad shosehu. So it's fascinating that these are the exact same nations that David is described as conquering. Now Shaul is doing it. the thing that Rabbi Silver wants to point out is that chapter 14, the end of chapter 14, is the height of Shaul's kingship before he makes his mistake in chapter 15 with Amalek. This, what we're reading in chapter 8, is the height of David's kingship before he makes his mistake, except that his mistake comes with Bathsheba in like 2 or 3 prakim. We're going to read now at least one of the 2 prakim that are kind of sandwiched in between. He wants to compare the mistake with Bathsheba with what David's about to do with Shaul's remaining son or grandson. Okay, are we good to push on for a little bit more? Excellent. Okay, we're going to chapter 9 is pretty short, so we're going to try to tackle that as well.
The difference also, though, is that Shaul never makes them vassal states.
Yes, for sure. He might fight against them, but he doesn't do what David did to create a real empire.
An empire, and more importantly, a wealth within which it could be used to build what he wanted.
Right. The other thing that some of the commentaries point out is that what David did with Moab is a fulfillment of the prophecy of Bilam. By Bilam, it says, "Our enuvelo ata shurenuvelo karov darach kochav miYaakov v'kam shevet miYisrael." I see it, but it's not now. A star is going to come from Yaakov, and a scepter will rise from Yisrael. Umachatz pasei Moab v'karkar kol bnei Shes, and he's going to smash the brow of Moab and the foundation of the children of Shes, who are the rest of the nations that David is attacking over here. That is from Bamidbar 24:17. Okay. Vayomer David, and now we get to the softer side of David. After he's become David the rampaging conqueror, we now have David the person who loves to do chesed. Vayomer David, Hachi yesh od asher nosar lebeis Shaul ve'aseh imo chesed ba'avur Yehonatan. Is there anybody left from the house of Shaul that I can do chesed for them because of for the sake of Yehonatan? Now, if you recall, David actually made 2 oaths. One was to Shaul, and the other was to Yehonatan. He told Shaul he wasn't going to wipe out his whole family, and he told Yehonatan that he would take care of his children. So now he's keeping his oath. It seems really more for Yonatan than for Shaul. So he asks a question that I'm not 100% convinced is a legit question, meaning until Shaul was killed, Shaul's family was like Lahavdil, like the king of England. Everybody knows who they are, so you would assume that if there are any children left of the house of Shaul, people know exactly who they are, right? It's hard to just disappear. I'm sure the paparazzi are after them. No,
That's inaccurate, because once Shaul is gone, and
they just disappear into the ether.
They disappear into the ether for fear of being
so they intentionally. Okay, so that's a great point. They absolutely intentionally. We're going to assume that they intentionally disappear. They don't want to be found.
They don't want to be found because they're worried for their lives.
Excellent. Ulebei Shaul Eved, and to the house of Shaul there is an Eved Ushmo Tziva, and his name is Tziva. And I'm going to kind of color your perception of Tziva right out the bat. He's a cad. Vayikru lo El Davim, they call him to David. Vayomer HaMelech Elav, and David says to Tziva, Ha'ata Tziva, are you Tziva? And the answer he gets is Vayomer Avdecha, your servant. Right? This is in general a phenomenon in Tanakh. When someone asks a question, nobody answers yes. They answer reasserting the assumption of the questioner. Are you the servant that I know of? I am a servant. Right? Vayomer Hamelech ha'efes od ish lebei Shaul. Is there anybody left of the house of Shaul? Ve'aseh imo chesed Elohim, and I'm going to do chesed with him like I pledged before Hashem. Vayomer tziva el hamelech od bein liYehonatan necher raglaim, and we know this from 2 or 3 prakim ago, right? The narrator kind of already foreshadowed all of this and told us there's this kid. His name is Mephiboshet, and he was made into a handicap because the nurse was running away with him, right? So we know the answer to this question, even though the characters in the story haven't yet learned the information that we the readers know. So now to your earlier point, if the base assumption is Mephiboshet is in hiding, then by Tziva telling David this, what is he doing?
He's calling him out.
He's ratting him out, right? So now there's two ways to read that. You can read that as Tziva equals bad guy, right? He doesn't seem to care that that Mephiboshet will probably get killed by David. Or you have no choice, because if David finds Mephiboshet, if you say there is nobody else, right? Then and then he goes and finds Mephiboshet, then you're really screwed, right? So you've been asked by the king. You have to say something. It's also weird that, like, who is Tziva? We described Tziva as the head of the household of Shaul. Is there a household of Shaul? If not, then why is he still the head? Like, the way I picture this, the way I read these psukim, he's out in Shaul's huge tracts of open land, basically taking care of an empty estate, right? Because Mephiboshet is not there. Otherwise he would say, "What do you mean? You want Mephiboshet? He's like in the backyard. I'll go get him." That's not what he says. He says, "Oh yeah, there's this guy, and he's lame. Vayomer lo hamelech efohu. Where is he? Vayomer tziva el hamelech hinehu beis machir ben Amiel below Davar. He's on the other side of the Yarden. He's like in this guy Machir's house. Not Tziva and Mephiboshet are not in the same place, right? If Tziva is a slave to the estate of Shaul, meaning he's an Eved Kanani, so he gets inherited with the estate. It's a package deal. So then why is Tziva not with Mephiboshet? Fair? Does that make sense? So you can either answer, well, Mephiboshet is trying to keep a low profile, and if Tziva, the head of Shaul's household, is with him, then it draws attention to him. Or you can say Tziva is living high on a hog, taking care of an empty estate and rewarding himself, while Mephiboshet is out hiding and not enjoying the fruits of Tziva's labor. Right? I think both of those are fair, and some of this is me kind of overreading into the text, because we don't have a real indication yet, at least, one way or the other. Okay. Vayomer lo. Okay, so we did pasuk Dalid. Right, he's in this very interesting city. He's in Lo Davar. The other way this same town is phrased in Divrei Yamim is Lo with an aleph instead of a vav. The way at least one of the Mefarshim reads it is he's penniless, like Lo Davar. He has nothing. So you don't have to pay attention to him. In other words, he's handicapped. He's penniless. He does not merit the attention of you, O king.
But he's just under Yehonatan.
Right. Well, again, we know that David has no intention of doing bad, right? Anybody that did bad to Shaul or his children, David killed them. David is not really out to. We, the reader, know that. The character doesn't necessarily know that, so it could be that Tziva was protecting Mephiboshet. By telling him you don't even have to pay attention to him. He's out in Nowheresville. He's not trying to cause you any trouble. In fact, he's handicapped. He has no shot at the kingdom. Like, just leave him alone. He's persona non grata. Okay. Vayishlach hamelech David v'ikachehu mibeis macher ben Amiel milo davar. And so the king sends word and takes him from where he's at. Vayavo Mephiboshet ben Yehonatan ben Shaul el David. And he brings Mephiboshet, the son of Yehonatan, the son of Shaul, to David. Vayipol al panav v'yishtachavu, and he bows down and prostrates himself. Who's it? Folkelman, I think, is the one that points out that for a cripple to do this is actually like physically challenging. To throw himself on the floor and then have to kind of pick himself, like this is real obeisance. This is really going out of his way to show deference to David. Vayomer David
fear.
Or fear, yeah, very good, absolutely. Vayomer David Mephiboshes, are you Mephiboshes? Vayomer Hine Abdecha, right? Again, same idea. Vayomer Lo David Al Tira, don't be afraid. Ki osa
which is again,
he's feared.
David is indicating that he's fearing him.
Right. Ki osa im cha chesed bavur Yehonatan avicha. I'm going to do chesed with you because of this shvur that I made to your father Yehonatan. Vashivosi lecha as kol sadeh Shaul avicha. I'm going to restore to you all of the estate of your father, meaning your grandfather Shaul. V'ata tochal lechem al shulchani tamid. And not only that, you're going to be a ben bias by me. You're going to eat at the king's table constantly, whenever you'd like. V'ishtachavu vayomer. So Now Mephibosheth responds, V'yishtachvu v'yomer, me'avdecha ki panisa el hakelev hames asher kamoni, like, who am I that you should pay any attention to a dead dog like me? This phrase, a dead dog like me, we had actually once before in Shmuel, and that was David talking to Shaul about how lowly he is. Say that again?
If it's related to the Malchus.
Right. So
I think that's rights, David.
Right. I think that's exactly right. Meaning,
Mephiboshet had run away.
Right. Mephibosheth had run away. But this is still his stuff.
It's not his stuff if he's not around.
Halachically, it's his stuff, even if he's not around.
Halachically, it's his stuff if he's alive. He ran away to say, "I'm not around."
Right. I'm saying, does David have to restore this, or is this like a ceremonial gesture, but it was really Mephibosheth's stuff either way? Okay. That Ishboshet, what is it? Malbim says Ishboshet was considered a Moreh b'Malchus because he rebelled against David, and so therefore David inherited all of this property, and it actually belongs to David, and he's legally giving it to Mephibosheth, not just ceremoniously. I also want to point out that I don't think Mephibosheth says anything other than the one answer that there's cellophane part 2 over here.
There is an opinion that if you're more of a Malchus.
So David continues. Okay. V'yavadta lo es ha'adama ata uvanecha v'avadecha v'avesa v'haya leben adonecha lechem v'achlo u'mephibosheth ben adonecha yochal tamid lechem al shulchani u'letziva chamisha asar banim v'esrim avadim. So you and your sons and your slaves. So remember, Tziva has 15 sons and 20 of his own slaves. He's a primo slave. Right, he's a nar. Mephibosheth ben Adonecha yochel tamid lechem al shulchani uletziva chamisha asar banim ve'esrim avadim. And Tziva has 15 sons, 20 of his own slaves. Vayomer Tziva el hamelech v'chol asher yitzaveh adoni hamelech es havado ken ya'aseh avadecha u'Mephibosheth ochel al shulchani kecha mid. Tziva is sort of twisting what David said. Tziva's like, got it, no problem. Just like you said, that's what I'm going to do. Mephibosheth is going to eat at my table, like a king, like the son of a king, at Tziva's table, not at David's table. Right? You see the subtle switch over there? Tziva's like, no problem, I'll take care of him, just like you said, but in a completely different way than what you said. Mephibosheth ben Katanu Shmo Micha, and this is just an aside from the narrator, that Mephibosheth, we knew that Mephibosheth was like 5 years old when he became lame. And then David's been in Hebron for X number of years. What I mentioned to you before is chapter 8 has thrown chronology out the window. So we have no idea how many years have transpired, and if all those battles all took place kind of sequentially, or if this story takes place during some of those battles. But the point is, Mephibosheth is now old enough to have his own child, whose name is Micha, who gets a lot of screen time in Divrei Hayamim. V'chol Moshav Beis Tziva Avadim LeMephibosheth, and all the members of Tziva's household worked for Mephibosheth. So you have 36 people who are taking care of this one lame individual, I guess, and his son. Mephibosheth Yoshev Yushalayim, and now we get again the coda, the sort of the summary of the parak. Mephibosheth Yoshev Yushalayim. Mephibosheth did not stay with Tziva in Givat Shaul, where Shaul's stuff was, and eat at Tziva's table. In fact, he went to Yushalayim. Ki al shulchan hamelech tamid hu ochel, because in fact he would eat at David's table all the time. Vehu pisech shei raglav, and he was lame in both feet. The reason we have to reinforce that is not for any additional information in this parak, but this is not the last time that we will meet Mephibosheth. We're going to see him again, and the fact that he is lame is going to play an important role in his future. A few really interesting points. So Robert Polson points out that we talked about how David's rebuke of Michal was reminiscent of the rebuke of the Ish Elohim rebuking Eli. He points out that there's actually a continuation of that theme in this parak. In Shmuel Aleph in Parak Beis, in chapter 2, pasuk was it Lamed Vav, the Ish Elohim describes what's going to happen to Eli, like the remnant of Eli's family, and he says that the nosar, the remnant of your house, is going to bow before the anointed one of Hashem and be dependent on him for his bread. Here you have Mephiboshet, who David describes as the nosar, as whoever remained from the house of Shaul, is bowing before David, who's the anointed one, and eating bread at his table. We're not gonna have a chance for quite some time to pay off the second version of this, which is the end of David's line ends up eating bread at the table of a different king, and that is after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. We'll get to that one day, please God, in Malachim. The only other thing I want to point out is Chazal see Mephiboshet in a very interesting light, just to kind of round out his profile. In Brachos Daf Dalid, we get the following. David is talking about what a chassid he is compared to the other kings of the world. The other kings go to soirees, and David says, "I've got my hands dirty dealing with tuma, with Taras HaMishpacha Shailas." And then he makes the following assertion: "Kach amar David l'fnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel olam lo chassid ani shekol melachim mizrach u'marav yoshvim agudos bechvodam ve'ani yadai meluchlachos bedamu v'shafir b'shilya kedei l'tar isha l'bala." So all the other kings are off, partying, and I'm taking care of halachic questions. V'lo od ela kol masha ani osa, everything that I do, ani nimlach b'Mephiboshes Rabbi. I check with my Rebbi. Who's David's Rebbi? Mephiboshes. Mephiboshes is the Rebbe of David. The Omer Lo, Mephiboshes Rabbi Yafa Danti, and David says, I checked with my Rebbe. I say, Mephiboshes, Rebbe, did I judge this case correctly? Yafa Chayavti, Yafa Zachisi, Yafa Teharti, Yafa Timesi, below Boshti, and that's the play on the name Mephiboshes. I'm not embarrassed as David to consult with Mephiboshes. Tana lo Mephiboshes Shmo ela Ishboshes Shmo. There's in other times his name is rendered as Ishboshes v'lam nikra Shmo Mephiboshes. Why was he called Mephiboshes? Shahayim mivayesh pnei David b'halacha, because he could embarrass David in halacha. He was so wise. Lefichach zacha David yatzim menu Kilav. That's why David was merited to have a son whose name was Kilav. V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan lo Kilav Shmo ela Daniel Shmo. In Divrei Yomim, Kilav is referred to as Daniel, v'lama nikra shemo Kilav, shahaya machlim, because he would embarrass Pnei Mephiboshes b'halacha. So David, because he would defer to Mephiboshes in halacha, he merited to have a son who would be even smarter than Mephiboshes in halacha. There's one other time that we get this idea that Mephiboshes is a big Talmid Chacham. That's in Eruvin 53b. Amar le Rebbi Eloi hatzbinenu heichan Rebbi Avo tzafun. The Chachamim would speak to each other kind of in code, and they would ask these riddle questions. Where do you know where Rebbi Avo is? And you can't just answer, oh, he's 2 blocks away. You would have to answer with a riddle. Amar lehen nisyaitz b'machtir v'nahig l'Mephiboshes. He's hiding with the one who crowns, meaning the Nasi. He's hanging out with Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and he's gone to Mephiboshes, meaning he's gone to the south where all the big Talmidei Chachamim are. The Mephiboshes is a way to describe a big Talmid Chacham. Okay, just to quickly summarize what we've learned in the 2 prakim, David the Conqueror goes on a pretty amazing rampage, defeats the armies of the north as far as southern Turkey. He amasses a bunch of wealth, which will go to building the temple, and he neutralizes his enemies, turning them into tributaries whose horses can only do simple domestic horsey stuff. We saw a bunch of archaeological support for Tanakh, with things like Toi and Edom being described in the Psukim in ways that are borne out by the most recent discoveries. And then we saw a softer side of David, who, once he conquered the world abroad, upholds the promises that he made to his dearest friend Yehonatan by doing right by his remaining son Mephiboshes. Next week, we're going to see an interesting war that perhaps could have been prevented, but which again shows David's strength as a warrior and a statesman. Ad Khan. This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on our journey of learning, and I hope you will tune in for another episode soon, Mirz Hashem. Be well.